A somber holiday weekend for anyone who was a Ravens fan. I know we're all excited about the schedule. We're all excited about London. We got our trip on sale. We got the draft in a whim. It's a big football season right now. And, on Friday, the Ravens family released a story on Conrad Rulin, who lost his life with an aneurysm in November. And Rod Carew was one of my favorite baseball players. And I know when Luke and I talked about my trip 2 years ago, we talked about the Rod Carew statue in Minnesota. And then on Saturday morning, in the middle of the night, literally, the Todd Heap tragedy and the story unfolded as people were having breakfast on Saturday. Luke, I don't even know that I could talk about it with any sort of thought that doesn't. It's different for me. I mean, I know Todd. I know Todd well. I know Ashley well. I don't know their children, but I see them running around from time to time when they bring their family in. And I think for anyone, I've never heard of a story like this that's been people that I know, that I respect so much. And Todd and Ashley were amongst the first to reach out when my wife was diagnosed with leukemia the first and the second time. I know you were part of our show with Todd up at Adams Jeep, and I haven't reached to them personally, and this is the first time I've discussed it other than to put a word up on Facebook. But I don't even know what to say. The mortification, the tragedy, the depth of the tragedy, the long tail of the tragedy for anyone around them. It's unspeakable, unimaginable, as the Ravens wrote.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that, you hear stories like this from time to time on the news, whether it's national story or something local. And, your heart sinks and you feel for people who go through something like that you've never heard of before. Just anonymous names, names that have no connection to you personally. And, something like this doesn't deserve to happen to anyone. Let's make that very clear. But to know what kind of people the Heap family they are, and to just try to comprehend something like this happening, I don't care if you're of the strongest faith, and the Heap family, they have strong faith, and I pray for them that will bring. I hesitate to even use the word comfort here because I don't know how there's any comfort. Life will go on for them, but even if you're of the strongest faith, I just don't know how you deal with something like this. And it's heartbreaking. It's tragic. It's one of those things that happen that you question everything about this game of life that we're all going through and just asking why. I mean, bad things happen to people in everyday life, and we're all hit by that directly or indirectly at some point in time. But for something like this to happen to a kid, and for something like this, where a complete accident, police, there was no suspicion here. Todd wasn't under the influence of alcohol or anything like that, according to the reports. I mean, it's just senseless. It's just something that is just so horrible to hear to happen to anyone.
Well, I remember when Trent Dilfer's son died. He was 5 years of age. This happened maybe 2 years after the Super Bowl win, maybe 2003 in that range.
Yeah.
And, it's 14 years later. And, within the family of this team, right? I mean, whether it was David Modell and CB in the last year and, obviously tragedies around losing Zeus a number of years ago and Chuck Evans. And, as the world unfolds and these stories happen, it is amazing, what the Ravens family has endured in the 21 years of being here. You know what I mean? And that these things have happened within the framework and the backdrop of how much people fall in love with the families and the people around this, and then the real world happens, and things happen, and I think we all respond differently, but there's no one that could wake up Saturday in my space where we are, where all of us are touched by Ravens fans, and all of us have celebrated these incredible things together, that we grieve together, as a community. I mean, I remember to the Tim Hewlett tragedy happened early in my career, and the Orioles obviously were this much bigger, more family-oriented oriented, feel to them at that point where you knew the players' wives' names. You know what I mean? And for the community, I've never heard of this. Literally, I've never heard of this kind of tragedy. And as I'm on camera, my parents turned their back on me when I was 3 years old, and I lost my finger in a lawnmower accident. And that it happens very, very quickly with small children, and we all, in our own minds, say, how did this happen? How could this possibly happen? And, again, this is the first time I've talked about it. My wife and I haven't even talked about it in 2 days because I don't think we can talk about it.
Frankly, it's something that's difficult to even think about. And throughout the weekend, and look, I joined NST and started covering the Ravens in training camp in 2009. It was the tail end of Todd Heap's run, but certainly growing up in this city, being a Ravens fan growing up, seeing him come here post-Super Bowl and the kind of career he had, knowing the kind of charitable work he did here locally, all of that. And
there is no better guy I've ever met in sports than Todd Heap. I can sincerely, and I probably have done this privately, say about someone, well, he's no Todd Heap. You know what I mean? Yeah. Measure any player that I've ever, and I brazenly said Joe Flacco's my favorite athlete in Baltimore sports history to talk to and chat with, and a regular guy. And he would tell you, I'm a good guy. I can hear Joe saying this, but I'm not the guy Todd is. We would all measure ourselves by who Todd Heap is. And that would be for anyone in any walk of life. And I would have said that Friday night had you asked me that. That's just how I feel about Todd Heap as a human being.
Yeah, and again, it makes it so much more difficult because you know what that family is. This is a horrendous story. This is a 3-year-old little girl, and a father who is now going to just live with incredible guilt. And again, like I said, I hope that their faith, knowing that they have a strong family, you hope that they're able to endure. They'll never get over it. It's that's the Captain Obvious statement. But like I said, this is such a painful story for anyone to go through. But when it's someone that again, personally, I don't know Todd Heap particularly well, but anyone who knows him just knows the kind of guy he is, the kind of family they are, and it's just
on a personal level, I don't know what to say. What I don't. What text do you send? What's the thing you say when you see them the next time? I think, and having been through my wife's issues and the own tragedies and the stuff, people don't know what to say. They don't even know where to begin. They don't know how to express support, grief, love. Whatever it is, it's I don't even I talk for a living and I don't know what to say about it. I really don't, and I don't even know how to react to it on a personal level. But then there's the whole side of this that you're going to see him again, and they're going to see you again, and everyone wants to reach out and touch and say something. But I think people were without words on social media other than just a scream out loud. For all of us to imagine that to imagine the unimaginable, literally.
I think it's just a reminder for all of us, and this goes far beyond the sports arena or any context related to the Ravens. It's a reminder to all of us that life is incredibly short and
fragile.
We're all very vulnerable at any moment. You could be sitting in your home and your roof caves in for whatever. Life is just that precious, and it's just a reminder. I think going back to what you said, the message to me is you love them. You love the people around you, and don't be afraid to tell people that. And I think it's not profound. It's nothing that's overly inspirational, but it's the truth. Tell the people you know that you love them. The people that you love, make sure they know that. And that's all we can do because we're not guaranteed anything in this life, no matter how healthy we are, how young we are, how old we, whatever. It's just the
transition to the Conrad Rulin story on the other side. That Rod Carew and Conrad Rulin, that story was all over the news over the weekend. It's been picked up by the American Heart Association, and they're turning it obviously into an incredible campaign around sports and around donorship and being involved. And clearly, my wife and I are sitting on the couch sobbing on an Easter morning, hearing this incredible story. And, 5 minutes later, my wife's donor is tagging us in with his family eating Easter dinner in Germany. I mean, it's a small world. I mean, and on a weekend where the backdrop is war and North Korea and marching and all of that stuff, there are these incredible stories around sports of loss and inspiration and desperation and perspiration. And in the case of Rod Carew and Conrad Ruhlen's mother, boy, that was a hell of a scene. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, it's just such a powerful story. Released the same weekend that many of us, like myself, celebrate Easter. Just this story, this idea of a tragic death. I mean, someone who is 29 years old, taken due to a brain aneurysm, and that spawning new life for Rod Carew. And that was a well-documented story that he had been waiting for a heart transplant for at least a year or two. I mean, that's not something that was a secret. And just, I don't know. I hear a story like that, and we just got done talking about such an incredibly sad story. But you hear a story like this, and you just wonder about. Just me personally, you hear too many of those stories for it to just always be coincidental. I don't know. Just such a powerful story.
Well, this is going to save a lot of lives. I mean, I'll tell you right now, just the fact that we're talking about it. My wife said to me watching it, she's like, "You have your donor, checked on your license?" And I'm thinking, well, yes, of course I do, right? But I did it, 20 years, the first time that they asked me, I'm like, sure, if something tragic were to happen to me and something good could happen, yeah, sure. I mean, what do I care at that point? And I just feel like, well, everybody must check that box, right? I'm like, that's the easiest box in the world to check. It's not that easy. I mean, with conviction and religious beliefs and whether it's ever asked to you or how you feel about it or whether it queeves you out or skeeves you out or whatever it is, boy, that story makes you think about it, though. And, my wife's story should certainly make anybody think about it.
No doubt, and that's a big reason. And I thought of the same thing. I looked at my driver's license. I knew I was an organ donor.
You weren't the only one, right?
But I looked just to make sure that it was there. It's like one of those things where you just say, "Wow, this is why." And look, as you said, there are people that do have certain religious beliefs, and I respect that. But if there's nothing holding you back other than just having the heebie-jeebies about it, be an organ donor, be an organ donor, and have the opportunity that, even if your life is cut short tragically, like it was for Conrad Ruhlen, that something good can be spawned from that. And I think about how powerful that is for Rod Carew, but I think about what kind of inspiration, what kind of strength does that give the Ruhlen family? I mean, this is still a very new. I mean, they're still very early in the grieving process here. It's only been a few months. And to have this, knowing that that Rod Carew has his heart and his kidney, I mean, it's a really powerful legacy that Conrad Ruhlen left behind, and it's something that I think his family can hold on to for the coming weeks, months, and years. And I just think that it's something that's heroic to be an organ donor. You don't think about it much, as you said. I can think back to when I got my driver's license 17 years ago, and you check the little box, organ donor. Yeah, why not? Sure. And then you hear an actual living, breathing story of what it can do.
Well, it made my wife and I discuss it. I mean, it literally, we were on the couch, and my wife can't be a donor because of her transplant situation and where she was, but we did discuss it. I mean, and I'm, maybe somebody's out there listening to us right now or watching us on Facebook Live, and they'll discuss it. So, that would be the hope. They didn't play any football over the weekend, right? Nothing changed about the draft, and the Liars' Lunch was last week, and this whole purple wave of the incredible redemption and good and the incredible tragedy, right alongside it in the Ruhlen situation. And then Saturday morning, the unspeakable and unimaginable with the family of Todd Heap. And these stories are, there's still a lot of future ahead, I think, for all of us. And a lot of soul searching to be done, and then there's the football side of this stuff, right? And they're going to go and draft next week. There's going to be a schedule that's going to come out this week. We're going to get back into the football thing, but from the football perspective, right now, it's quiet right now, right? Like this is just meeting time, fixing the board, tuning it up. I don't think we're expecting the Ravens to do much of anything over the next 10 days, right?
Well, I mean, the players are going to get back to work this week. The off-season workout program will start. It was supposed to start Monday, but because of the Easter holiday, and I don't know if that was a John Harbaugh thing, I don't know if that was a players' union thing, I'm not sure, but they're starting on Tuesday. They're going to have some availability on Wednesday. So we'll hear from Joe Flacco scheduled to talk, Jimmy Smith, Mike Wallace, Eric Weddle. So they'll starting to get into some normalcy there. The schedule, as you mentioned, I guess it was leaked. Was it the Detroit owner? I'm trying to think who
Thursday
it was.
Thursday is supposed to be, right?
Yeah, that it was leaked that it was going to be Thursday. So we expect the schedule to come out this week, and we'll finally get some clarity other than the London game. And the Ravens have put in a request not to have their bye week 4 after the London game. We'll see how that plays out. The Ravens haven't had a really early bye in a few years. I think it was 2011. Their bye was week 5. I think that's the earliest they've had over the last 6 or 7 years. So it doesn't mean the NFL is going to grant them that request. So we'll see how that plays out. But we get a little bit of context with the schedule. Certainly the draft now. We're less than 2 weeks away for that. So we've heard all about the different visits. I don't put a whole lot of stock into that. But they've certainly met with pass rushers. They've certainly met with the wide receivers. Even news of Corey Davis being the most recent one. So they're putting their board together. They're tweaking. They'll continue to do that up until 10, 11 days from now. But we're getting to the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of that. But players back in the building this week. They begin workouts. Before you know it, they'll be out there for OTAs and rookie minicamp, and we'll have a better idea of what this roster is going to look like. But after the last couple days, with what happened with Todd Heap's family, and this Conrad Rowland story that was so powerful, get back to some nuts and bolts football kind of stuff. It'll probably be good for some Ravens fans who certainly hit hard by the news of what happened with Todd Heap, continuing to keep his family in our thoughts and prayers.
Well, he's very close with Joe as well, and obviously Dennis Pitta, their family, literally. I mean, those three families are, incredibly close, and that'll never be over. So,
no.
I don't even know how to put that into words again. So we'll just we'll step out. Luke will be around covering football all week, covering baseball all week. I'm up in Toronto covering hockey. Wizards are doing their thing, and if there's any breaking news, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month, and even north of the border, you can listen from anywhere in the world, including Sydney, Australia, where we had some listeners and on Facebook this week. It's all brought to you by our friends, of course, at buyatoyota.com, sending us around the world. It's the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault. It's there for you. You can podcast, listen when you want, where you want, how you want, mobile device, your iPad, wherever you are, little earbuds. Make it happen. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.